So I was born in the mid 50s in a quaint Northeast Iowa railroad town of Owine, Iowa, a once charming place filled with warm smiles and neighborly kindness where everyone knew everyone. I grew up in a loving lower middle class family in those 50s and 60s where I lived, I would say, a perfect life. My roots run deep in this community, said to be the very birthplace of the Chrysler automobile built by Walter P. Chrysler in a barn just a stone's throw away from my childhood home. But what truly shaped my heart was growing up in an Italian neighborhood with lots of Italians. My grandfather, who came to the United States from Italy, ran a small neighborhood grocery store surrounded by familiar faces and fragrant aromas of homemade pasta and unbelievable fresh bread. As soon as I was old enough to carry a grocery bag, my father entrusted me with delivering these bags of groceries to our wonderful Anziano neighbors. You know, the old ones, many of whom were widowed Italian women, all of whom had come to America from Italy. Each delivery blossomed into heartfelt conversations filled with laughter and with life lessons and with a lot of food, a lot of sweets and treats. And these cherished moments forged an unbreakable bond between me and what I call the old ones. So fast forward to 1992, 32 years ago, where I found my passion in real estate. And then 7 years later, in 1999, where I embraced my calling to serve seniors, earning a recognition as one of the first designated senior real estate specialists in America. So, for the past 25 years, I've had the joy of connecting with wonderful older citizens. Serving seniors has kind of been my thing. And now I'm suddenly 70, and yep, I'm one of them. So I invite you to join me for rich conversations on my podcast, especially today, my Senior to Seniors podcast, where we'll dive into stories of seniors, explore their unique experiences, discuss so many things. But the real issue facing seniors today and introduce you to those assisting seniors, and let's connect through this tapestry with some of the most interesting people impacting the senior community today. So, welcome to Senior to Seniors. And today, my special guest is Marcia Moran. And I learned of Marcia Moran by reading her book, which is titled Stroke Forward. And so I have my background thing, so I'll get the whole book in here, and we'll make sure Marcia tells you more about her book, or at least where you can get it and where you can connect with her as well. So, Marcia, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, Jim.
So let me tell you a little bit about Marcia. And actually, the bio that I have of Marcia that has been put together is just excellent. So you learned a little bit about me, and now you're going to learn about Marcia because she is the most important person here today. And I'm going to read from the bio that was provided to me. But so here's a little bit about Marcia. She's written over 50 business plans and helped entrepreneurs strategize over how to differentiate their companies in changing environments. After helping other entrepreneurs start their companies, she found her own business consulting practice titled Performance Architect in 2012 and co founded Positive Business DC that same year. Marcia suffered a stroke in 2014, just 10 years ago. She applied those skills in planning and strategizing as she strived to
Mhm.
become whole. She never gave up, and over time, she learned to walk again. But Marcia struggled with aphasia. Am I saying that correct, Marcia? Is it aphasia? Is that how you pronounce the stroke that you had?
Aphasia. Yeah,
Oh, aphasia. Oh,
aphasia.
Got it. Got it. So she learned to walk again. She joined Toastmasters, hoping to regain her speaking abilities, and she's done so many things. She created Stroke Forward because she felt there was a need to share hope to stroke survivors everywhere. And that's why she's here today, learning to become her own health advocate one step at a time and exploring holistic methods for healing are the keys to her recovery. She speaks and shares her message of hope, inspiration, healing, and in a way forward that she goes across the country. She welcomes new opportunities to help individuals affected by major health crises move forward. Marcia lives with her husband, Jim. She tells me two very loud cats and two birds near Washington, D.C. And her husband, Jim, played a huge role in her stroke recovery as a caretaker and advocate. His observations and experience are also captured in her book, Stroke Forward. So over the weekends or on weekends, Marcia and Jim and the cats go to Deep Creek, Maryland. So she's on the East Coast where Marcia paints watercolors. In the evening, Marcia and Jim sit out on the deck and watch fireflies fly by. Marcia holds a BS in political science with a magna cum laude from the University of North Dakota, not too far from my roots in Iowa, and a master's in business administration from Chapman University in California. Marcia attended school in Norway to study art. She also earned a certificate of well-being foundations, a personal transformation from the Personal Transformation and Courage Institute in Virginia. Marcia became a certificate health and life coach from Health Coach Institute in 2021. So again, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, Marcia. So tell me, yeah, your book takes people through your journey from the stroke, the day you had the stroke, almost minute by minute of what you were feeling, what you went through, all the way to your recovery and through a number of people who were important and huge influences in your life. But why could you describe the day
Mm.
that you had the stroke? Tell us a little bit about it. Maybe a little bit of a spoiler to your book, but take us through that day.
Morning. And I knew that I was off. So I tried to text my friend and I couldn't read the text. It was all weird.
Mhm.
So I thought, well, I must be tired. And I put the phone down. I rolled over and got the worst headache imaginable. And despite the pain, I fell asleep. The next time I woke up, I knew I was in serious trouble because my right side was paralyzed. And at that moment, I thought, you have to get up and find help, or you might lay here and die. That was
Mhm.
really what I had in front of me. So I rolled out of bed and I dragged myself across the carpet till I got to the door, which was closed. And I reached up and I don't know how many times, but I was kind of stuck to the floor and the handle was just out of reach. And I finally made the door open. And by that time, I was so tired, I took a break. And I don't know how long I
Mhm.
laid there, but I finally made my way down the hall. And finally, now my husband was downstairs and he came up and said, Marcia, are you okay? It's like, no. And I didn't realize until that moment that I couldn't speak. So, well, okay. And anyway, he called anything that was wrong. And he couldn't. So he came back and waited with me until the firemen and paramedics arrived. And the first paramedic that came through the door said, "When did she have her stroke?" Yeah, that was it.
Man. And
Yeah.
you know what? So Jim came up, and as I remember, he heard a thud or he heard a noise that you thought maybe it might have
Yeah.
been you. But was there really a noise, or do you think it was something else that brought Jim up?
So I think he heard me fall out of bed. And then I think, now, I don't know what other people will think, but I think someone made a noise in my behalf. So
Yes. Yeah.
uh, something rattled or something and
That's
said, "Hey, you better look up here."
Yeah, that
Right?
it was what I got from it, what I felt from reading it, was like it was almost divine intervention
Yeah.
that, Jim didn't really have a reason to come upstairs, uh,
Right.
but thankfully he did. I'm curious. You said that you woke up and you knew something was wrong, but you went
Mhm.
back to sleep. Did you
Yeah.
go back to sleep because you thought, I don't want to face this. There is something wrong, but I'm just going to go back to sleep? Or was it that, well, maybe if I go back to sleep, I'll be better when I do wake up? Why?
Number two. Yeah. I wouldn't have gone back to sleep if I realized I was having a stroke, you
Wow.
know.
Yeah.
So person loses almost a million brain cells when they're having a stroke, a minute.
A minute.
So mhm, that's a lot of brain cells to lose.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
one of uh, one of the things that especially impacted all of this on for the good was the EMT didn't give you a medicine or a drug that would have made things worse, right? How did he know that? How was it just because you didn't know how long you'd been out? How was it just
Right.
his best guess? How did he make that decision not to give you?
So he decided, since he didn't know how long I had been asleep, I obviously had the stroke when I was sleeping.
Yeah.
And there was no way to put a time frame on it. So he didn't, he decided not to give it to me.
Wow. Thank goodness, huh? Because it would have been detrimental if he would have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I don't know how much harder the recovery would have been.
Yeah.
And I will tell you right now, the recovery was hard enough.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I can look at it and say it was hard and I can laugh about it, but it was really, really tough,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
I think it takes special people to get through whatever crisis they go through, whether it's cancer or uh, you know, dementia, whatever it might be. But you had quite a battle on your hands. So tell me, it was the left hemisphere that was affected, which is the right side, which is that correct?
Right.
So it's just the opposite.
Yes, that is correct.
And and so
Mhm.
how difficult was that? Because you lost your right hand. For how long did you lose your arm and hand, the use of for any practical purposes?
So they make you start using the side of your body that is affected as soon as they can. So I started using my hand that day.
Right away.
And although I say using my hand, it was like I wasn't using it well,
Yeah, it was
you
just
know.
a
It
thing.
and in
Yeah.
fact, people often, yeah, yeah. People often ask me, do you feel it? And it's like, yeah, I still feel it, Although it looks like I'm better, I'm not completely healed.
Hmm. Wow. And so then it came down to walking. And it seems to me that they got you up right away. Yeah, they didn't let
Yep.
you lay around. And like you said, they started working that area because you were in the hallway walking maybe the same day or the next day, as I recall. Tell us about your walking journey.
So, it was the same day. And the physical therapist came up to me and she said, I'm going to take you for a walk. I'm going, uh-huh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And she put a walking belt around me and hoisted me up. And um, I didn't fall. And I didn't fall because she held me up with the belt. And I felt like I was young Frankenstein in the movie going clump, clump, clump. My foot was out to the right.
yeah.
Um, my gait was awful. Um, but I was so glad to get back to the bed because I could go to sleep again. That was the only thing I wanted was to just get back there and go to sleep.
Just give.
And I will tell you that my husband, right, he was right there with me, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so
So
your husband Jim was with you all along the way in a way that I don't know what you would have done without Jim. And often when I'm working with seniors, one of the things that I deal with and they have to deal with is they have no one in their lives. Some of them
yeah,
don't have children. They don't have, a sister like you had Dale, your sister, brother-in-law, and other people in their life. So thank goodness for Jim. He played such a pivotal role in all of this. And it affected him too,
yeah.
did it affected him too? I mean,
It- I think he changed roles with me. So he became more outspoken, and he is still more outspoken than he used to be by quite a bit. And I think that for him, um, well, one, it was terrible because he had to figure out everything
yeah.
all at once, you know. Um, but I think looking back, that has made him more, I would say, vulnerable to me.
Hmm.
Um, I got to see the side of him that I knew was there, but it felt just more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And he didn't let me see the vulnerability until after I was out of the hospital. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he had to. I mean, he had to, he was your advocate. And if it sounds like, you had great people working with you in most cases, right? Um,
Yeah.
but I know going through and being in the hospital with my family and myself and so forth, um, you've got to be your own advocate, or there's got to be an advocate for you, especially with doctors, because they have their way of doing it, and their way of doing it isn't necessarily the right way, so someone
Yeah.
has to, speak up. And so how did it affect Jim's job? Because Jim was working full time at the time, wasn't
Yeah.
he? Tell me about that.
He
How
was.
did he get through that with his job? Did he have a great boss? And uh, how did that work?
He did. So he took some time off while I was in the hospital. And when I went to the rehab hospital, he worked half days. And then um, when he got home, he worked from home until August. So they gave him the flexibility to work with me.
So this happened on March 28th or March 30th, right? 2014. And so March, April,
Mhm.
May, June, July. So basically 5 months. So he had 5 months to be with you virtually just about every minute of every day, other than going to the
Yeah,
hospital. Huh? What a blessing. What a
yeah,
blessing. And you know, something I think that I've learned myself is that it was it was it was a blessing for you, but it was also a blessing for him that he was able to be with you and help you through all this. And so it's wonderful that you had Jim and the whole cast. You know, if you were turning this into a movie, your cast is amazing. And for those listening, before we started this interview, I was telling Marcia that uh, when I read a book, I write down the characters in a story, and so I can remember the names and have some connection to them. So when I hear them again, if I'll know who they are. And so I don't know how many names I wrote down. I have a lot of them written right in front of me that I'm looking at from Marcia's physical therapist, who was Sandra, and Esther, who was her dad's sister, who's in her 90s. I mean, I've got Deborah, the massage therapist, and Dr. Robinson, and Rochelle, and Pat, and Mary Elizabeth, and Christina. And I mean, the cast is vast. And so you are blessed by a lot of wonderful people, weren't you? You know.
yeah. I
Yeah.
was. They say a lot of people, friends. I didn't lose any. I was just, and I think part of it comes down to they were true friends before I had my stroke.
Hmm.
And they decided to rally around me. And they're still friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's a miracle.
Yes, it is. Well, one of the most antagonizing parts of your story was when you talked about swallowing as a result of the stroke. And, you know, I was telling you before we started that I actually, your story is told so well that I felt that I was in, you know, your bedroom when you had the stroke, were going through the stroke. And it was the same when you were describing eating and what you were able to eat. Talk about, because before reading this, I guess I hadn't spent any time reading about strokes. I mean, who does that? I mean, who picks up a book and go, you know, I think I'm going to study strokes today. At least I didn't. And and so I think that's how you know you're setting a lot of light. So talk about just the dire circumstances of being scared to eat. Could you talk about
Yeah.
that?
So you don't think about being paralyzed, right? But the paralysis goes all the way through. So I was paralyzed on the right hand side of my throat too, right?
Mhm.
And although I had some muscles coming back, I was still weak. So I couldn't eat straight on. I had to turn my head to the left and swallow, and then turn my head forward again. And they didn't really discuss it much with me, but there was a problem with swallowing that if I let it go down the wrong pipe, I couldn't cough it up because again,
Paralyzed.
I didn't have any muscle,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Um, and so they put me on a liquid diet, which was okay. And when they made a mistake in the kitchen and brought a chicken dinner to me, maybe it was lunch, and I saw, ooh, chicken, yay. I took a bite and swallowed it and choked. And if the nurse hadn't been there to get it out, I don't know what would have happened.
Well, yeah.
And then they started sending, yeah, liquid food to me again. It's like,
So it was a
okay.
mistake in the kitchen or something, right? So they just didn't have the correct order.
And the nurses didn't catch it before it came in the room.
Mm-hmm. Real thing.
So,
These are real things
um,
that happen to people. This is real stuff,
yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah.
Mm, wow. So,
Um,
so talk about and explain to me the word I mispronounced.
I don't
Aphasia.
know.
Talk
It
about
was awful.
oh God, it had to be. It just had to be miserable. So the kind of stroke you had was aphasia. Is that how you say it? Is that correct, Marcia? I'm sorry if I'm not saying it right. The type of stroke.
So, no, that's fine. So, one of the symptoms I had from the stroke was aphasia.
Got
And it happens to people that have a left-handed stroke. And so I would say that 40% of people who have a left-handed stroke also have aphasia. The 10% of us who don't get aphasia are left-handed. So it's kind of how the memory is built,
hmm
right?
hmm
Um, so if you are, if you have aphasia for more than 3 months, they say that you probably have it for life. And aphasia is a communication disorder where you can't speak, read, write, or comprehend. And it could be any of those or all of those. So I couldn't speak and I couldn't write. And it was frustrating, very, very frustrating. Um, because I knew exactly what I wanted to say,
hmm
but I couldn't get it out. And so when you try talking to someone and you can't express yourself, a little piece of you at less and less of a person because I couldn't speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad, really.
But the therapist, the speech therapist, all the people got you through that, just through hard daily, maybe more than just daily, right?
So the speech therapist said I would always be looking for words, right? She also told me I would always speak very slowly. So, hi, my name is Marcia. So that's what I was expecting.
hmm
And I decided I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So I looked for something out there that would make me get better. And I found different things that helped a little. So I had laser therapy. And the laser therapy got me speaking to what I would say is 40% better. I could speak conversationally. Hi, how are you? The weather is beautiful, however it was, if I
Yes.
could speak at all. Um, and at 3.5 years, I found the IASIS microcurrent neurofeedback device. And that is the device that actually cured me of the aphasia.
So,
Um,
Marcia, say that again.
so
Marcia, what was the name of the device again? What was the name of?
IASIS micro, yeah, IASIS microcurrent neurofeedback.
Okay.
Okay. And it's this small device. And the doctor hooked me up and turned the computer on, and I felt nothing. I went, is he kidding me? But I could talk better that day.
Hmm.
And I had 16 sessions, and I talk like I do today.
Wow.
So something comes into my mind, and I can say it.
And is it a therapy that all stroke victims can expect to get.
No,
Okay, so
no.
you were fortunate because you were in the hospital, had the therapist. How did you discover it?
So, by accident.
Mm.
So I was seeing somebody and I was getting acupuncture. And this person, at 3.5 years after my stroke, this person said, "Hey, there's this device out there that I think you should try. Here's the URL. Go home and look it up." And I went home and looked it up, and I'm going, okay, sure, right. So anxiety, depression, traumatic brain injury, a list of things. I'm going, okay, in the website that said that it doesn't make you get any worse. So going, okay, that's okay. And I also saw that 85% of traumatic brain injury survivors who used this device got better. I'm going, okay, I'm going to give it a try.
Mhm.
And I am so grateful because that turned my life around. And in fact, there was one of those devices in Virginia. And between my doctor and the guy who invented this device, they decided that I could have one. So that's what I do for a living now, is I go out and I treat people that have brain injuries and help them get better.
I did not know that. I don't know how I missed it in the book. Maybe because I was too caught up in.
It's not in the book.
Oh, isn't it? Okay, because I was going to say I totally missed that. Um, and so
Yeah. That, no,
repeat that because you cut out for just a minute, Marcia.
no, it's not in the book.
Okay, okay. So tell me how
Book.
that works.
This became a part of what I did, how it works.
Yeah.
So it's an FDA approved device
Hmm.
and it relaxes the brain. So I don't go and treat people for stroke or TBI or anything like that. I treat them in a way that relaxes the brain. And it increases neuroplasticity. It increases blood flow. You get so this is interesting. Tau and beta amyloids, which are things that you don't want in your brain because they are plaque, right? The plaque buildup. It helps the tau and beta amyloids get out of your brain.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a miracle. It really is. So, I think for me, the greatest experience was that I found this device. It worked. And the doctor and the guy who invented it suggested that I give it to other people so that they can also get better. Three. And I think that anyone who has aphasia should try it
Hmm.
because there is nothing worse than trying to talk to somebody and being silent because you can't get the words out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't imagine the closest thing I have is as a musician. As a musician early in my life, I was able to express musical thoughts on paper any just about any time I wanted. But now
Mhm.
it's more difficult. I'm not as creative, and maybe it's because I don't work on it like I did, but I'm not as creative as I once was, and I can't get it out. Um, So kind of the same thing. So are these devices available in every state? Because you said, is there one in Virginia? Is that what I understood you to say? Or
There was one in Virginia when I got my treatment. I got the second one, and there's now a third down in Roanoke. So there are three in Virginia. There's one in DC, Maryland. There are none in DC. So it's it's early on, I'd say.
it,
It's probably been about 17 years since the device has been created.
hmm,
Yeah.
it sounds like at least for you, a miraculous. I'm sure it doesn't have um, the same effect on everybody, but boy, it sounds like, yeah, it's a life
Yeah.
changer, for sure. So, so tell me, you're probably you know a lot of information about stroke. So for the listeners, how many people in the United States have strokes a year? What kind of statistics do you know, Marcia? What's out there?
So about 800,000 people have it every year. Of those, I'd say 160,000 die.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a really bad statistics. Um, of the 800,000 who have a stroke, 80% of them are um, unnecessary. And by that, I mean that if somebody is overweight, they need to eat right, they need to exercise. I mean, it's all the stuff that nobody really likes to hear. But if they were in better shape,
Yeah.
they might not have that stroke. That I am part of the 20% that it doesn't matter what you do.
Well, and so many of us, it's like it's not going to happen to me. It'll never
Oh,
happen,
yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm type 2 diabetic. I'm probably 40 pounds overweight. I'm 70. I've had high blood pressure. I mean, I'm probably the perfect candidate. And,
Yeah.
I think about it, but I don't, like many people, do anything about it. Isn't that, I
Yeah.
mean, that's what a sin
Yeah.
about that. So tell
Well,
me,
I mean,
go ahead. Go ahead.
well, who thinks about it, right? You don't think about it until you have it. And then you go, oh, darn.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that I found fun and funny in your book was snapping your fingers. And it's something I can't do because I have arthritis in my hands. But um, how did you discover that? How was it part of therapy when you were going through therapy and stuff? Or how was it one of those things where, oh my God, I look at that, I can snap my fingers?
So it took a long time to be able to snap my fingers. And my husband and I would go out walking, and I would try to snap when we were walking. And all of a sudden, I think I heard something. And it's just one of those things. You can't imagine what it's like not being able to do the simplest thing.
Hmm.
It it's it's and learning how to do it again, you go, "Whew, I
Yeah,
can snap my fingers."
I bet. Yeah, I was just talking to over Thanksgiving dinner with uh, one of my relatives, and they were talking about skipping, and they hadn't skipped
Mhm.
since they were a kid. And so someone said, "What can you skip?" And they said, "Well, of course I can skip." But when they went to do it, they couldn't do it anymore. There's no such thing as it's like riding a bike, right? And I think you might have even used that analogy in the book, like riding a bike. But um, so, well, tell us what are some other things you would want people to know, the listeners of my podcast? What uh, other than reading your book, which is a wonderful read, and learning about your story, what would you like them to know that uh, maybe we haven't talked about?
So if a person has had a stroke, they need to look around their general area. They need to look at Stroke Awareness Oregon because that group is so phenomenal with they teach people to do everything that they can. So, for example, if you have aphasia like I had, um, you can talk to the people out there, and the people with aphasia will talk to you and say, I got it too. What can I do to get out of this? Well, maybe I can see a doctor. Who? Maybe I can see a doctor like Marcia saw. So,
Hmm.
it's just a fun way of getting to know people who've had a stroke.
Yeah,
Um, but locally, um, they understand what it's like to have a stroke too. And I think you have to have connections with the people around you who've also had a stroke because you have to have somebody who understands, right?
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
somebody that's been through it as
yeah.
well. But yeah. So tell me, if you're giving me advice, what's something that I should do? For what you know me, other than losing weight and watching my diet more closely, what would you recommend to people? What's something that everybody should do to maybe prevent a stroke? What other things might help them?
Well, I think um, diet, exercise is probably the most important things, diet and exercise. Um, I think the thing I've learned the most is that you're not here every day. You don't know when the last day is. So make the most of the people around you. Make sure you have the right people around you, right? People that are your friends, people that help you lift you up, right? The
Hmm.
people that don't do that, that are down, maybe get
Hmm.
rid of them
Yes.
because you don't need that kind of anguish in your life.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think
Surround.
also that's something you learn from getting older.
Yeah, I think so too. Surround
Yeah.
people that bring happiness and joy to your life. The others don't matter because there are enough difficulties, as you know, that we all face and go through. And so I think that's great advice. So, what reignited your curiosity? One of the things mentioned in your book that your curiosity seemed to be reignited through this whole stroke experience. Did I get that right? Are you a more curious person now than you used to be?
Yeah, I think I'm more curious about the simple things. So it's snowing. So there will be part of me who sneaks out and sticks my tongue out and catches a snowflake
Yeah,
because that's the part of being a kid that I remember.
yeah,
And I'm grateful for remembering those simple things, right?
yeah,
Life hasn't doesn't have to be very complex.
exactly. But Well, Marcia, I want to thank you for taking us a little bit through your journey and, of course, writing your book. And do you have other books planned? Do you plan on following this book up? What do you have in store? And do you speak? Are you on any kind of speaking circuit? Do you do anything like? Tell me what you're doing right now uh, in your life and your work and so forth.
So I'm speaking locally. I actually joined the Chamber of Commerce this year,
Okay.
and I find that being part of a chamber is really special to me,
Mhm.
because it makes it makes what I go through and what I went through more real to the people around me. And I think that when they have a stroke, know of somebody who had a stroke, they are interested in calling me and learning what they can do, things like that.
Sure.
Um, I forgot the question.
Yeah. Well, what are you doing now?
Oh,
You joined the
oh yeah,
chamber.
what am I doing now?
Yeah.
So I'm actually taking the IASIS device that I talked about. I'm taking it around and I'm treating people in their homes or in their places of business so that I can help more people get better. And I'm growing my business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of the questions is that something covered by insurance or probably not, right? Uh,
So I look at it like it's a couple $3,000, right?
mhm,
And if you think about where you are in life and where you want to be in life, like I had no way of having something that I could do for a job, right?
mhm,
And this came around, I'm going, well, darn,
mhm.
I should do this because this has such an impact on my life.
Mhm.
There are so many other people like me that don't even know about it.
Yes.
So if there's something that they could try that
Mhm.
could make them better.
Sure. Well, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
So
Well,
I'm hopeful that understand that there is this out there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I'm sure you want to scream it from the rooftops,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, something that helped you. So, how can people
Right.
get a hold of you? Of course, your book, Stroke Forward, is available on Amazon. Um, I'm sure it's available other places as well. Um, how do people get a hold of you if they would like to talk to you about your life and the stroke and even the device that you're working with now?
Okay. So they can contact me at Marcia at strokeforward.com. That's MARCIA at strokeforward.com. And I will be happy to return any emails that I get.
Great. And I'll make sure I put that on the notes on this podcast. So, Marcia, thanks again. I am going to stop the video in just a second. Don't go away because I want to talk to you after we turn off the recorded version of this. But on behalf of everyone that will listen to this, thank you so much for being with me today. It's been a joy. And as I said, I felt that I knew you when before we even talked, and I consider you a friend now that we have talked. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jim. I've really appreciated it.
You're welcome.